This morning's commemorative address will be delivered by the Governor-General of the Commonwealth of Australia, Her Excellency, the Honourable Ms. Sam Mostyn.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to those here at the Australian War Memorial in Canberra and all those watching the broadcast across our vast country. I acknowledge that today we gather on the lands of the traditional custodians, the Ngunnawal, and recognise any other people or families with connections to the lands of the ACT and surrounding regions. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present. The Honourable Anthony Albanese, MP, Prime Minister of Australia, and representatives of the President of the Senate, Speaker of the House of Representatives, and members of the state and federal parliaments. The Honourable Chief Justice Stephen Gageler, AC, Chief Justice of Australia. Her Excellency Betty Pavlich, Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, and members of the Diplomatic Corps. The Honourable Michael McCormack, MP, representing the Leader of the Opposition. Admiral David Johnson, AC RAN, Chief of the Defence Force and members of the Australian Defence Force. Mr Greg Moriarty, AO, Secretary of the Department of Defence. Ms Alison Frame, Secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs. Warrant Officer Class 2 Keith Payne, VC-AM retired, and Corporal Daniel Kieran, VC, and family members of the fallen. The Honourable Kim Beazley, AC, Chairman, Council of the Australian War Memorial, distinguished guests. Among the many honoured guests today, I am so pleased to welcome the scores of school children who have joined us today. Thank you for being present with your beautiful poppies of remembrance to honour those who served down through the decades to protect our way of life and the strength of our democracy. As you all know, this is my first Remembrance Day as Australia's 28th Governor-General. And as the daughter of an Army officer, I am honoured to be addressing you before the Stone of Remembrance as this ceremony returns to the parade ground after an absence in recent years. As a new chapter in the Australian War Memorial's redevelopment dawns, this unyielding stone is restored to hallowed ground. It is a symbol, unaffected by change and transformation, of the enduring tradition of respectful commemoration that is forever linked to this place and communities across our country. The Australian War Memorial is home to a vast and vital national collection, an accumulation of artefacts that bring to life the stories of the people and events of Australia's wartime experience. Exploring this precious national collection reveals objects, manuscripts, souvenirs, artworks, or recordings that speak to the meaning of war and service. For their Majesties, King Charles and Queen Camilla, who visited here only 3 weeks ago, the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier and the Roll of Honour were places to reflect on the sacred sacrifice of the named and unnamed Australian women and men who have died in service to their country. So too was the memorial to the proud service of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people for our country, at which their Majesties mourned those who have died in defence of Australia and honoured the deep connection of First Nations people to the land. For me today, I have found meaning in a single photo held here at the War Memorial, which came to mind during my first visit to the Western Front as Governor-General just 2 months ago. Captured from above Sydney's George Street, looking down towards Martin Place, it pictures a crowd gathered to celebrate Armistice Day on 11 November 1919, the first Remembrance Day after the guns fell silent in 1918. Standing in their thousands, they are Australians, stilled and silent a solemn moment of commemoration. For them, the loss of war was a present sorrow, grieving the dead, offering prayers for the missing, tending to the wounded in body and spirit. Children left without a parent, mothers and fathers mourning their children. The passage of time had not yet tempered their pain. Seeking solace in community, they gathered in Sydney and Perth, Pinnaroo and Wagga Wagga, Beechworth and Scottsdale, in cities and towns in the bush and regional centres across the country to commemorate and give thanks. And each year since, for more than a century, Australians have repeated this ritual of remembrance, just as we do, gathering today. Each year, we render our tribute anew to the generations of servicemen and women who have died or suffered for Australia in conflicts far from home. And so it is, our Remembrance Days are born of all the days of commemoration that have gone before. As each of us brings something of ourselves to the work of commemoration, our ritual is layered over time with the hearts and minds of those before, remembering and giving thanks. These are not just acts of commemoration, but of care, kindness and respect. My husband Simeon and I witnessed that in August when we travelled to Villers-Bretonneux Military Cemetery and the Sir John Monash Centre. This was a profoundly and solemnly moving experience that we shared with the many, many Australians, young and old, who travel the path of pilgrimage to France to honour the dead and learn something of where Australians fought and died. It is the modern equivalent of the Armistice Day gathering in Sydney in 1919 in that photo, and we were honoured to meet those Australians at Villers-Bretonneux who travelled to the Western Front to find meaning in an act of respect and love. In the months since my swearing in as your Governor-General and as Commander-in-Chief of the Australian Defence Force, I have experienced many times of reflection on what service really means and the ways in which we commemorate. I have had the great privilege of encountering the people and places of the ADF across Australia, at Holsworthy Barracks, RAF Base Tyndall, Fleet Base East, on HMAS Adelaide, with the 6th Aviation Regiment, the 2nd Commando Regiment, the cadets at the Royal Military College here at Duntroon, and the women and men who work alongside me every day. On land, at sea and in the sky, in theatres of war and in zones for peacekeeping, in protecting our borders and working in support of the safety and progress of our nation and our region, the Australian Defence Force is a modern force, upholding the greatest of Australian values, continuing the legacy of the service of generations past and demonstrating the very best of our nation. Along with all Australians who commemorate, we should deeply acknowledge the commitment made by the women and men of today's ADF to serve with integrity, courage and honour. In their dedication to duty, their pursuit of peace and their defence of Australia, they also embody the flame of remembrance. And today, across Australia, we now gather in solemn acts of remembrance, offering our own tributes to the fallen and the families, the veterans and all of those who know what it is to serve. Honouring them and all of those who have gone before, we embrace their memory and hold it in our hearts, lest we forget.